I'm standing before you as a candidate for the leadership of the Labour Party. Now, some of you may be thinking, almost subliminally, she can't be a candidate for the leadership. She doesn't look like a credible leader. Well, let me tell you that in the 21st century, in an international and globalised world, this might just be what the next leader of the Labour Party looks like. I stand for genuine inclusiveness, genuine pluralism, not rejecting the talents of some because they weren't on the right side of the right faction, and in particular leaving behind the factionalism of the past, which led to people at the top spending so much energy fighting each other, they weren't actually fighting with the people we were there to represent. I have a longer history, if I might say, modestly, than anyone on the platform in the party at every level, as a ward councillor, collecting subs at a ward level, as a elected member of the National Executive in the 90s. So I have a view about party democracy and how we can bring democracy back to the members. But finally, let me say this. We had a magnificent record in government, magnificent. My own constituency, 5 new schools, a new railway line, millions poured into the hospital, but we didn't listen. Had we been prepared to listen to ordinary supporters, members, even our own MPs, we would have avoided some of our worst mistakes, abolishing the 10p tax rate, going into an illegal war in Iraq. So I've never been a new Labour minister, but I called... Never. But I called all the big issues right. And in the words of John Smith, in the last speech he gave before he died, he said, "The chance to serve is all we ask."
Very good. Now, can I have hands for questions? Yes, in the third row back. Yeah. Can we have a microphone this down in the front here?
I spent a good part of the general election helping the Labour Party defeat the BNP in Barking and Dagenham. And along with young Sam here, and the number of economic problems out there, one of the real reasons why the BNP were able to get a foothold in Barking and Dagenham was because people there felt that our party no longer took any notice of them, that their votes, which have always been for the Labour Party, have always been a majority, were taken for granted. Can we have an equal society unless we have a society in which everybody's vote counts the same? What would your position be on the coming referendum on alternative vote, and what are your feelings about proportional representation?
I'll start with a different person each time. Ed.
Billy, thanks for that question. Thanks for everything you did in Barking and elsewhere. And I was with Margaret also embarking on that campaign. My position on the alternative vote is that I'm for it, and I will campaign for it in a referendum as leader of the Labour Party. But I want to take your question more widely, just briefly, because the truth is that in this debate about immigration that there is, not just in Barking and elsewhere, people are right to say that immigration was raised on the doorstep. But we need to go beyond that. And the way you go beyond that is by looking at the underlying issues that were causing people's concerns around immigration. And we all know what they were in this room, and they're the issues we need to deal with. They're about living standards and wages and what is happening to people's pay, because immigration is a class issue, and we should say that. Secondly, it's about housing and social housing. And we know we didn't do enough on housing, and I take my share of responsibility for that. We did a lot on decent homes and upgrading people's homes. We didn't do enough to build homes. Final thing I'll say, As a child of immigrants myself, I think we should always be incredibly careful in this debate in immigration. So yes, let's talk about it, but we must never get into a bidding war on immigration, because it is a war we cannot win.
There was a second part to that question, which was about PR, not just about the AV referendum, but about PR.
Well, let me answer it plainly. I'm for the alternative vote. Why am I for the alternative vote? Let me explain. Because I think it makes people accountable, because you have to get more than 50% of the vote, but it retains the constituency link. And I think the constituency link, and having one class of MPs with a constituency link, one member, 60, 70,000 constituents, is an incredibly important part of our democracy and holds people to account.
Ed.
In my constituency in Yorkshire, we have the largest BNP membership in any constituency in the country, according to the BNP. And it was a matter of great shame to have a BNP member of the European Parliament elected last year. And we were proud to eject the BNP from Leeds Council in my constituency, thanks to the hard work of party members and trade union members, over 100 of them in my seat this time round. And we beat the Tories as well. I support the alternative vote. I'll campaign for it. I don't support proportional representation. I've seen the way in which Liberal Democrats in private meetings break their promises to do private deals. And I've also seen the way in which the BNP got elected to the European Parliament. And I don't want to give small parties that power. And that's what proportional representation will do. But I have to say as well, Billy, on the doorstep, fighting the BNP and fighting the Tories, people didn't raise with me the issue of voting. They did raise, as Ed said, housing. They raised tuition fees. They raised the fact that they didn't think the proper protections were in place for their terms, their conditions, through the agency workers and the posted workers directive. And they felt, and in my constituency, they say no to the BNP because they support immigration, but they feel as though it was too fast and its impact was too hard in the last few years from Eastern Europe. And if we don't take that seriously, then we are not facing up to the reality of things on the ground. But the reason why I'm a constitutional reformer, the reason why I support a written constitution, is because that is the best way for us to entrench a belief in the power of government and the state to reduce poverty, to deliver free healthcare, to deliver decent education, the things my constituents want. And we should use that debate to expose this neoliberal Tory Liberal coalition who only agree on one thing: government's the problem, get the state out of the way. Let's expose how right-wing these Liberals and Tories really are and get them out.
Andy.
Thanks, Polly. I think the election changed a lot of things. I think it certainly showed us that the Lib Dems, in your own words, Billy, were certainly not the great leap forward. And I think we know that now. Also, it changed my own view of voting reform. I hadn't been somebody who'd argued for reform, but I just saw the impossible choice that some people faced in constituencies, whether to vote with their heart or their head. I mean, that really came home in so many constituencies. So it led me to believe now that change is necessary. And I think I will back AV, although we do need to understand what implications it will have for the Labour Party in a parliament where potentially the constituency boundaries are going to be redrawn. I just placed that caveat. But just on your big point about immigration, and Ed is right, we can't pretend that we haven't heard what was said to us on the doorstep. But Ed Miliband is also right that we can't say this isn't a debate about saying we don't want people to come in and we don't want free movement of labour. I'm never saying that. I will support free movement of labour across Europe because my own dad benefited from it in the 1980s and 90s, as did many British workers when work was hard to find here. What we have to do is deal with the consequences of a more mobile world. So we support free movement, but we say to people in their communities, but we'll also protect you in a more mobile world. So we will protect you as an agency worker or as a posted worker. And we didn't do that. And that weakened our argument then in saying to people that free movement is a good thing. And Ed is also right to say we should do more with housing. Personally, I would bring more private rented accommodation that is in so many of our northern towns and cities. Get that private rented accommodation back under the control of local authorities. And I think if we did that, we could have better access to social housing in our communities. And I think that would deal with the issues and give people actually what they're looking for. I don't believe there's any racism in the vast majority of people. They just want to see us dealing fairly with those issues.